And with us now to talk about this controversy over the Cambridge cop and the Harvard scholar, Michael Eric Dyson of Georgetown University, among other things, a biographer of Barack Obama, a sociologist who's written a lot about politics and sociology, and Kathleen Parker, the syndicated columnist, I would say it's fair to say conservative columnist of the Washington Post, although she is ambidextrous, she tells me. What should we make of this, Michael?
Well, obviously, it was a flare-up along a bigger trajectory of race in American society. The disagreement, the disgruntlement, the disconcerting evidence of racial and class hostility between Sergeant Crowley and Professor Gates, and the president getting involved. And what I love about him, he's a principled gentleman. He says, look, I ratcheted it up. I admit that I did this, mea culpa. Let me try to help figure this out. I think we've got to focus beyond the persona and the personalities here to the bigger issues. Racial profiling is real. Disproportionate concentration of Black and Latino men in prison is real. The death penalty being unfair to many people is real. So I think we have to have a broader conversation about race. And Eric Holder, the Attorney General, suggested to us during Black history that we have been a nation of cowards when it comes to race. He was widely booed and some people reviled him. Now his words have come to haunt us and they appear to be prescient. So I think that what we have to do is to have open, honest conversation on all sides without prejudging the situation, but to suggest at the same time, Bob, that look, there are some big problems here. If Mr. Crowley and Mr. Gates go join Mr. Obama in the White House and have a beer, that's great. But we haven't done get to what ails us, and what ails us are structural problems. And the president, by the way, has the bully pulpit to talk about this in a more powerful way. I think he's been loath or at least reluctant to speak about it. I think he should dive right into it. And secondly, he should change some of the policies that actually affect Black and brown men once they go to prison, the harsh penalties that they endure. I think all of that kind of stuff, if that's where it leads us, I'm sorry, that's going to have a huge effect that is very edifying on the American conversation.
Will it?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I agree with so much of what he said, and you know, because of my introduction, I suppose I'm supposed to present some conservative view, or because of my skin color, I'm supposed to see the white view. But you know, this is not a clear-cut black and white issue, I don't think. In fact, the ambidextrous conversation had to do with the fact that I could argue both sides fairly passionately. This conversation about race desperately needs to take place. Barack Obama is uniquely positioned to advance that conversation. I think he stepped in it a little bit. You know, when he got up at that first press conference and said the police acted stupidly, but first by prefacing it, saying, well, I don't really know the facts and I am biased, but, you know, Barack Obama was doing what, I think he was being the person Obama and forgetting momentarily that he's the President Obama and everything he says matters. But he did do the right thing, coming back and saying, look, I did make this worse. I'm sorry I made it worse. He didn't say I'm sorry, but indicated as much.
But, you know, that was kind of remarkable in itself. I can never recall, and maybe one of you can, a president actually saying, I made this worse. I thought that was a very interesting moment in the history of the American presidency.
If he got the press conference question, can you think of anything you've ever done wrong or that you regretted or that it was a mistake? He would not have trouble thinking up something to say.
Which is remarkable. I mean, that is an indication, I think, of profound leadership, of a depth of integrity, and at least the willingness to acknowledge, if I'm going to ask the American people to do some stuff, I got to be willing to say that I was wrong myself. And I think, but look, I think that Kathleen is right. When you look at Barack Obama, it did have a sense of flashback, you know, because many black men have endured this particular problem. I mean, I'm a professor at Georgetown, got a PhD from Princeton, but I was stopped by the cops in New Jersey, and when I told them I was working on a PhD at 3 o'clock in the morning, had me walk a line. I'm a teetotaler and a Baptist preacher. I don't drink. He said, yeah, and I'm the blanking president of the United States. I mean, the kind of disparaging and humiliating remarks made by police people toward African-American and Latino men. I don't think there's a moral equivalency here. That is to say, police people with big guns going into your house or accosting you on the street are not equal to people who get mad and outraged that they've been stopped. Most black men would never say what Professor Gates allegedly said, according to Sergeant Crowley. We're too scared. I've had white people that I've been with who, when stopped, got out of the car and cursed the police. I took cover because I knew a hail of bullets was about to come.
Let me ask Kathleen, let's suppose this had been two women. Would this have happened?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think we do have, there's a male aspect to this. There's a pride aspect to this. Guys are going to go head to head. They're going to say, look, oh yeah, well, I'll show you, buddy. Your mama, oh yeah, well I've got the guns and the handcuffs, so we'll show you who's boss. You know, that's males take it to a different level. I don't think it would have been the same thing. And I would say that once I was, since we're trading personal stories, I was pulled once by a female, black female traffic cop, and I got a little feisty. It was about 100 degrees. I was tired. I had a toddler in the seat, and I didn't think I was speeding, and I wanted to argue. And she indicated to me that if I didn't adjust my attitude, I'd be going to jail. Right. And so I adjusted my attitude. It was a pretty simple thing. Yeah. And you know, if we're going to get right down to the bottom line in this case, I want to say that the man with the gun and the handcuffs and the power is the man who says, we made a mistake, see you later, or, you know, go ahead and let him have a piece of your mind if you want to, but walk away.
But look at it this way, too. If that had been not Professor Gates, but Henry Kissinger, another Harvard professor, and George Bush, the president, and he said, that's my friend, and a black sergeant arrested him, he'd be doing traffic duty right now. The police union would not stand behind him, and I think we'd have a much more different understanding and interpretation. So these things do make a difference. Class makes a difference, race makes a difference, testosterone makes a difference.
Well, and that class distinction needs to be talked about too, because when Professor Gates said, do you know who I am? You've got a black intellectual saying to a working class white guy, I'm more important than you are. You know, that sets up a whole nother set of sparks. But we were talking earlier, and we've decided that not only should we be invited to this White House encounter, but what would be interesting, the way you get to the truth is you have the opposite sides defend the person they're least likely to defend. You argue for the white cop, I'll argue for the black intellectual.
Well, what's interesting as well is that the class issue comes out this way too. It took a president and a Harvard professor to gin up enough pedigree and social status to argue against what is usually taken for the law, a white policeman. That's a class matter too that has to be dealt with.
I'm going to speak for the timekeeper here.
Okay.
Our time is up. Thank you both so much.